The wind howled like a living thing, clawing at flesh and bone, screaming across the empty plains as if the world itself wanted her gone. Snow cut sideways through the darkness, sharp as needles, biting into her cheeks, her hands, her soul. Each step sank deep, boots soaked, toes numb beyond pain. Christmas Eve, they said, was meant for warmth and miracles. But out here, there was only white death and the sound of her own breath breaking apart in the storm. Before this story truly begins, let me ask you something from the heart. If you believe in powerful stories, in second chances, in love born from desperation and courage, then subscribe to our channel and share this story with your friends. Someone out there needs this miracle tonight. She nearly froze on that road. Not the gentle kind of cold that makes you shiver and laugh. This was the kind that steals thoughts, that whispers lies like, just sit down, just rest. Her name was Clara Whitmore, and by the time she saw the faint glow in the distance, she was no longer sure she was still alive. The ranch house stood alone against the storm, a dark shape with one stubborn lantern burning near the barn. Clara stumbled toward it, every step an act of rebellion against the cold. Her fingers were useless claws, her lips cracked and bleeding. She reached the porch and collapsed against the door, knocking with the last of her strength. Inside, Elijah Boone paused mid-step. He was a big man, broad-shouldered, weathered by sun and loss. The kind of rancher who didn't believe in luck or miracles, only work and endurance. He had planned to spend Christmas Eve exactly like this, alone, feeding the fire, pretending the date meant nothing. When the knock came, faint but desperate, his hand froze in midair. No one came out here in a storm like this. Another knock, weak, then silence. Elijah grabbed his coat and yanked the door open. She fell into him. Her body was ice, her weight almost nothing. Snow clung to her hair and lashes like frost on dead branches. For one terrifying second he thought she was already gone. Then she gasped, sharp, ragged, and clutched his shirt with trembling fingers. "Please," she whispered, voice barely there. "Don't send me back out. I'll die." Elijah swore under his breath and dragged her inside, slamming the door against the wind. He laid her near the fire, stripped off her frozen coat, rubbed warmth into her arms. His hands were rough, practiced, but careful. "Why were you out there?" he demanded, though his voice was quieter than he meant it to be. Her eyes fluttered open, blue, terrified, determined. "Because I had nowhere else to go." He gave her hot broth, wrapped her in blankets, and watched color slowly return to her cheeks. Outside, the storm raged, but inside the house something fragile and dangerous had entered. Hope. Hours passed. The fire burned low. Clara sat upright now, hands wrapped around a mug staring into the flames. I can't stay," Elijah said finally. "Not like this." She looked at him then, really looked, saw the loneliness carved deep into his face, the empty chair at the table, the silence that pressed in from every wall. "I know," she said. "That's why I'm asking you to marry me." But the words landed like a gunshot. Elijah laughed once, sharp and unbelieving. "You're freezing half to death and asking a stranger to marry you?" Her hands shook, but her gaze didn't waver. "I'll work, I'll cook, I'll help with the ranch. Her voice broke. "I just need a place to belong, and you need someone too, whether you admit it or not." Silence filled the room, thick as the snow outside. He should have said no. Every sensible bone in his body screamed at him to throw her out come morning, to forget this madness. But Christmas Eve had a way of cracking open even the hardest hearts. "Just until the storm passes," he said gruffly. "We'll talk after." She nodded, tears slipping down her cheeks, freezing before they fell. "Thank you, thank you." That night, Clara slept by the fire while Elijah sat awake, staring at the tree he'd cut days ago and never bothered to decorate. He didn't know it yet, but the storm hadn't brought destruction to his door. It had brought his future. The next morning dawned in a world remade. Snow blanketed the land, silent and pure. Clara stood at the window, breath fogging the glass, a strange peace settling over her chest. For the first time in months, she wasn't running. Beer Elijah watched her from the table, coffee cooling in his hands. She moved like someone afraid the ground might disappear beneath her feet, like someone who had lost too much already. They talked, slowly, carefully. She told him about the factory closing, the boarding house that threw her out when she couldn't pay, the road that nearly killed her. He told her about his wife, dead 5 winters ago, buried on a hill that overlooked the ranch, how Christmas had died with her. By evening, the storm was easing. The road would be passable by morning. Beer Elijah stood by the door, coat in hand. "I can take you to town tomorrow." Clara swallowed. "And then what?" Bree didn't answer. She stepped closer, heart pounding. "I meant what I said last night." "Beer, so did I," he replied. "And I said we'd talk." They stood there, 2 broken people balanced on the edge of something terrifying and beautiful. Outside, the wind finally rested. That night he gave her his wife's ring, not as a promise, not as a lie, as a chance. And she took it. The days that followed were awkward, tender, fierce. Clara learned the rhythms of the ranch. Elijah learned the sound of laughter again. They married quietly, no guests, no fanfare, just vows spoken with shaking voices and eyes full of truth. But love, real love, is never simple. Whispers followed them in town. Doubts crept in at night. Clara feared she was only a shadow in another woman's life. Elijah feared he was using her desperation to fill his loneliness. Then spring came, and with it, the test that would either break them or bind them forever. The past Clara had run from finally caught up. A man from her old life arrived at the ranch, sneering, demanding. Elijah saw red, words turned to fists. Truths spilled like blood on the snow that still clung stubbornly to the ground. That night, Clara packed her bag. "I won't be your charity," she said softly. "I won't be someone you pity." Beer Elijah blocked the door, eyes burning. "You're my wife." "But because I begged," she whispered. "No," he said, voice breaking at last. "Because I chose you, every damn day since that storm." She searched his face for a lie and found only love, raw and unguarded. They held each other as dawn broke, the past finally loosening its grip. Christmas came again the following year. This time the house was full of warmth. Laughter echoed off the walls. Snow fell gently, not as a threat, but as a blessing. Clara stood beside Elijah, her hand resting over his heart, knowing she had been saved that night. She had been found. The snow melted slowly that year, like the land itself was reluctant to let go of what had almost killed her. Clara watched it retreat from the fields day by day, revealing dark earth beneath, earth that smelled like survival. Every morning she woke before dawn, pulling on worn boots, tying her hair back, stepping into a life she was still afraid might vanish if she breathed too hard. But she was a wife now. The word felt unreal in her mouth, like something borrowed from another woman's life. She cooked Elijah's meals, learned the habits of the horses, memorized the creaks of the house at night. She learned Elijah, too, how he went silent when memories pressed too close, how his hands trembled slightly when he thought no one was watching, how he stood at the window some evenings staring toward the hill where his first wife rested beneath a simple wooden marker. Clara never asked about her. She didn't need to. The dead had a way of making themselves known. At night, when the wind rattled the walls, Clara lay awake listening to Elijah's breathing across the room. They shared a bed, but not always sleep. Some nights he reached for her as if afraid she might disappear by morning, holding her like an anchor in the dark. Other nights he stayed turned away, his body rigid, trapped somewhere she could not follow. Love, she was learning, wasn't born clean and perfect. It came bruised, it came scared. Br, and then the town began to talk. She fey, LT at first, in the way the shopkeeper's smile didn't reach her eyes, in the way women paused mid-sentence when she entered the room, in the way men looked at her with curiosity sharpened by judgment. A stranger who arrived during a storm. A marriage too fast. A woman with no past anyone could verify. Elijah Boone don't make foolish choices, someone whispered one afternoon as Clara passed. So what does that make her? But Clara pretended not to hear, but the words lodged deep. At night, doubt gnawed at her like hunger once had. If she hadn't frozen, if she hadn't begged, would he have ever chosen her? One evening, as the sky burned red with sunset, a rider appeared at the edge of the ranch. Clara saw him first. Her blood turned to ice, for he sat tall in the saddle, hat tilted low, a familiar cruelty in the way he smiled as he dismounted. Thomas Hale, the man she had fled, the man who had promised her safety once, then treated her like something owned. Elijah stepped out of the barn, sensing trouble before he saw it. "Well, I'll be damned," Thomas drawled. "Didn't expect to find you playing ranch wife." Clara moved instinctively toward Elijah, her hand gripping his sleeve. Elijah felt it. The tremor, the fear, and something dark rose in him. "Are you lost?" Elijah said. Thomas's eyes flicked to the house, the land, the life Clara had built. "Just passing through. Thought I recognized the lady." "Beer, I'm married," Clara said firmly. Thomas laughed. "To him, that's rich." "Beer, Elijah Saint," ebbed forward. "You'll leave. Now." Thomas's gaze hardened. "You don't know who you let into your bed." The punch came fast. Elijah didn't remember throwing it, only the sound of bone and the taste of rage. They fought in the dirt like animals, fists and curses and old sins colliding. Clara screamed for them to stop, fear and shame tearing through her chest. When it ended, Thomas lay bleeding, spitting threats. Elijah stood over him, chest heaving, hands stained red. "You come near her again," Elijah said quietly, "and you won't leave this land alive." Thomas left that night, but the damage stayed. Clara packed her things before dawn. She moved silently, tears blurring her vision. The past had followed her here, poisoning everything. Elijah deserved peace, not scandal, not danger. She was tying her bag when Elijah appeared in the doorway. "Don't," he said. "I have to," she whispered. "I won't be the reason your life falls apart. You think I married you out of pity?" His voice cracked. "You think I'd let anyone take you from me?" She faced him then, tears spilling freely. "I begged you. I was desperate, and I was lonely," he said. "But what we've built since, that's real." Silence stretched between them, fragile and trembling. "I choose you," he said again, "not because you needed me, because I love you." The words broke something open in her chest. She dropped the bag, collapsing into his arms. He held her like the storm itself might try to steal her away. Gain. Our spring arrived fully after that. The land bloomed. So did they. Clara learned to laugh without fear. Elijah learned to let go of ghosts. They planted a tree together near the house, a promise rooted in living soil. At night they talked about the future, children, seasons yet to come, a Christmas filled with light instead of silence. When winter returned, it came gentle. On Christmas Eve, Clara stood by the fire, the same fire that had saved her life. Elijah placed a small box in her hands. Inside was a new ring, simple and strong. "For the woman who didn't just survive," he said, "but changed everything." For she kissed him as snow fell softly outside, no longer an enemy, but a reminder.